There we go. It's tough when you get old and you're trying to do this modern stuff. We're actually going to finish up some stuff from last week. Actually, probably the last couple weeks. We need to do a finial for the piece from last week. Actually, first order of business will be to go sharpen some tools. Let me go to live one. Yeah, there we go. Not much to see right at the moment anyhow. We're going to go sharpen a couple tools. I still have not changed the wheel on the grinder, so it's a little bit of a coarser grind. I don't know. I don't think it really doesn't seem to hurt anything. It's just grinding a little bit more steel each time. So we'll do our bowl gouge first. You know, we're doing a finial. Chances are most of it will be done with the spindle gouge. It's got to have very, very nice light pressure, especially for that 80 grit wheel. Will take a lot of material at one time. That's what it's designed for. We still haven't given up on our short spindle gouge yet. See if we got that in the right place. I have two marks on there now. I do not. I don't really want to increase the length of the bevel. I do want to take some off the front of this one. I keep changing some stuff here. And sort of change the shape of this a little bit. I'm going to get it back to where I had it originally. I've taken that much off of the nose, so I probably should recheck it. Although it probably didn't take enough off to make that worthwhile. This is the problem of when you do, tools get too short, or it gets to be short, it's below the, or it's beyond the flute. So if I don't get it in there the same each time, which I didn't, we're going to grind away a little bit more material than what we needed to. So we're going to get back to where I had it originally, I think. That should be good. Get rid of some of the heel, or a lot of the heel, I should say. That part I do freehand. And try not to mess it up. Which is not unheard of. For me, anyhow. And we'll come back over here. And I do like my short spindle gouge, for sure. So, piece of wood. There we go. This is a piece of what is it called? Bolivian rosewood, I think it was called. Kind of like poor man's ebony. It is very dark in color. It's a little bit browner, some of it, than like the black wood and things like that would be. But it'll still be very dark. That end actually has some brown in it, looks like. So we'll just go corner to corner, all four sides. Because in this case, I don't want to lose a whole lot of diameter on this piece. It's not overly long, or not overly big. It's big enough, I'm pretty sure it's big enough for the finial that we had to make for the hollow form from last week. So that's going to be the base. So put that down there. Use the small live center so that it don't create such a big point in there. And a stub center on that end. So the key is not to try and make it any shorter than what it already is. And we'll probably rough this down with the skew. The more you use it, the better you get with it. So use it to do kind of like some of the simple little stuff like this. Your trusty face shield, and we don't need the big skew, we'll use the small skew. As always, start out slow and bring the speed up. Little piece of wood, we can spin it quite quickly. And then we'll just start out on the end. Not quite round yet. Just about there. Mostly there. Same thing on the other end. Not quite. This wasn't very square. Still not totally round, feels like. Nope, still a little bit, but it is nice and dark in color, which is always a plus. Skew could probably use a little touch up. My little honing stone over here. So what I do, I use one of the little diamond cards. I'm gonna just go across it like 3 times on each. I try and do it the same amount of times on each side. That way we're keeping our cutting edge in the middle. Because if I push too hard, then you'll get some vibration, which is where I was at there, because we were pushing hard rather than allowing the tool to glide. Still a little flat. Okay, good enough. Still a little tiny little flat right there, but it's I do need this end down here to be nice and round right on the very end. Because now we're going to need to do a little fitting for the lid, the base piece. This is the piece from last week. This does have the, actually I used 3460, which is a little bit thicker super glue because this stuff is very, very porous. Didn't do actually a particularly great job on it. I did have to sand a little bit today. Places that, because once it's off the lathe, it becomes more of a challenge. And I should have, as I did a real little one, I should have put a dowel through the center of it, and then I could have had a little bit of something to hold it down at this end, and then I would have had full access to it. Otherwise, I did it with my finger in there, and it wasn't a good way to do it. Not the way I should have done it. So now we have size for that. Get a parting tool. And then we'll use our calipers, and we should be, I'm not going to have a ton of material left on it. We got a place to sit our calipers in there. And we'll see if we go over the lid, which I doubt. We definitely don't want that to be a tight fit by any means, because this thing is probably not done moving, I would assume. Leave it, yeah. So we'll check our fit, and we're not even in the same ballpark. It's not a surprise. Any problem with that little live center? It's got such a little point on it, it's almost hard to find the pointy hole. I did set my calipers sort of bigger than the hole, quite a bit bigger actually. So and we could probably just cheat and give it a little bit of a taper. This is kind of going to almost be like box making, where you're going to have to keep checking the fit till you get the fit you want. It's getting close. Like I say, we certainly don't want a tight fit. Want it to lift off nice and easy. Be nice not to have the little hole in the marks in there. I have to think about that. I could probably grab it on that end, get rid of that. And this hole is no longer even round because it fits. It goes down in on two of the sides and not the other two. So that means it's not round. Question is, how big is this? Where can I? It is big enough. I can actually grab that. I put a little tenon down there. Although I think I really said that that was going to be the. Come on.
JoJo's is open. Is that what you want to do for dinner then?
Yeah. And that was going to be the top. Oh well, it'll have brown streaks down there. That's all. So just give a little place for the chuck to register down there. I'll still need tailstock support for the most part up here, but then I'll be able to move a little easier. Grab my chuck. Take my trusty little piece out. This is what I was using to support. I have a little guy that I did. Same material. I did this one yesterday, I guess it was. So this way I could support it down here, and now I'd have total access to the whole thing, which is how I should have done the top, or the big one, to start with. But we didn't. This will also make it easier to do the fitting part. Can bring our live center up and line it. It should line up in the hole, and it does. So we did something right anyhow. And what we didn't do right was check the fit while we were there. And we're still not there. And we probably got to get rid of this bigger tool rest. Go to small. Small work, small tool rest. This tenon also needs to be a little bit longer than what I think I have it. It's not going to probably give me quite the I won't be able to undercut that a whole lot there. Now that fits. So this needs to be undercut a little bit. Like I say, I don't want that to be tight. If it's tight, I'll be in trouble. Might be in trouble anyhow, of course, but If it's too tight, you're definitely in trouble. Something like that, because you'll just break the finial. I'll try and undercut that as much as I can, which is also going to increase the length. That. I sort of dug a trench back there, which shouldn't have done. But now, it actually fits on there fairly decent. I can't. I can try and undercut that a little bit more, but I don't think I can get much further up underneath. If I was so brave, I could probably use the edge of the skew rather than that. I think that'll be alright. I'll chamfer that edge a little bit, and we'll be good there. But I could use my small skew. And I'll just sort of use it as a scraper. That way I got rid of those lines that I had on there, where I touched it with the spindle gouge a little bit. Tiny little chamfer. Now I have to try and come up with a relatively pleasing kind of shape. Something along those lines. And here's where I probably should, yeah, that'll be fine, I think. Probably should actually switch to the long nose jaws. Like I say, it's been quite some time since I've done any of these. Probably should have done this first. You don't want that pointed hole in the bottom of it. I also wanted a little round there. It actually should be good enough for that. Probably could even touch it with a little bit of sandpaper. Just to make it look a little nicer right there. And that chamfer maybe, and maybe even that part right a little bit in there. Save my fingers a little bit because of the jaws. So we'll just use the last 3 grits on it, and that should be good. Certainly not a gallery kind of a piece as far as I'm concerned. I don't make any that are really gallery quality. This actually, if I can get this done, I think I'll be able to, as long as we don't mess this up. This will go on Tuesday evening back to the guy that gave me the piece of wood, and then it will get auctioned off at their big fancy dinner. That should fit in there. So we have to change some chuck jaws quickly. I do not have 2 of these. This is a VM100. I do not have 2 of those. So a quick change to the jaws and we'll be golden. And preferably not drop any screws in the chips. But they are steel screws, so if I do, won't be the major search. Just have to find the right number 1. And we'll just go right around. These things can get very, very tight. The longer those jaws are in there, seems like the tighter the screws get. Especially when you're using one of these T-wrenches. Definitely want to clean out everything in there before you put the new one in. We don't want to add a couple thousandths of an inch or something in there. Throws things out of whack. This is sort of what these jaws are designed for, to do long, skinny work. They even have there's a little dovetail in the nose of them. A lot of times I'll use them doing different stuff to where I'll stick the piece the whole way back in the whole and bottom out. I could have done that probably from the start if I'd have had these jaws on. Could have rounded it off that way. These are kind of a nice set of jaws to have, but I don't use them very often. Probably use the normal jaws, probably the most out of any for that truck. Okay. It's probably going to put marks. I'm not going to squeeze real hard on it. It's not quite down to a circle right there, so it probably definitely will leave some little indentations in there, but not a whole lot I can do about that. Because if I was to leave a longer tenon, then it becomes the issue of doing the finial part, and then you still have to cut it off and figure out something to do with that end. So now we can get rid of some of the mass. And I will actually go back to my bowl gouge. Really looks like this is going to have a little bit more brown in than what I would have liked. Close the flute and you try to pick up the cut. It works much better. I'm not sure I really want it quite that long either. So I'm going to come back here. Because all this is going to be waste up here anyhow. So we'll just get rid of about a ½ inch. Still leaves me tailstock support, which is really what we're after. At least for right now. A little bit more pressure there. And we can leave that a little bit, maybe a little bit bigger than what it needs to be at the moment. So I can go back here and get rid of some more material. Hopefully we didn't screw up the shape from the start. Got a lot of material to get rid of, so I want this to be sort of delicate. It's going to become considerably smaller than that. At least that's the plan. I don't want to take my support away just yet. That would be not a good thing. Still pretty big and chunky. Move the tool rest down a little bit. The smaller we go, the further down I need to go. And I think what I really need to do is actually sort of finish off this top. Maybe not. Decisions. There's the top is free. And it didn't fall off. position it's in now. I think I'm going to switch to the other. I actually have the deep fluted spindle gouge as well. This would make more sense too if we zoomed in a bit. See a little bit more what we're doing. And I probably should move that tailstock back, because the next order of business would have been to stick my finger. That one has a really sharp point on it. Okay. And probably while I'm here, slow the speed down a bit. Probably should sand this little bit up here. And hopefully we cut clean enough. It won't take much. And I don't leave the, some people like to leave the toothpick point on there. I don't. I try and make this a little user friendly, I guess you'd call it. So that's the little cone at the end, ready to go. Now we just have to continue getting this down in smaller and smaller. Really almost looks like I made that just could have been a little shorter than what it is. Got a hump in the middle. That'll sort of work. I'm going to try and get this a little smaller. And we're really not overly concerned if it's a little bit lumpy in there. That little bit will sand away quickly. Like I say, unless you're a Cindy Drozd or somebody like that that does these all the time, they can do them in their sleep. Where the amateurs of the world like myself don't really mess with this much. So I will have more sanding to do. I saw an advertisement the other day that really kind of struck me as being differently odd. That Stuart Batty is now is building a sort of a school, I guess. He talked about it years ago, but now it sounds like he's actually going to make it happen. But Cindy's actually one of the people that's going to teach some classes there. Of course, she only lives about 40 minutes or so away from him. So that would kind of make sense, I guess. Kind of curious to see what she's going to teach. It's really tempting to go across that with a skew, but I know what would happen if I do. We'd have a major redo. Because this could all be a little bit thinner. How about if we do it from underneath? Doesn't want to work. Now this is bigger. So it gave me a nice little disc. Now the real question would be, do we have what it takes to do a little bead behind that disc? The answer to that is probably no. Disc also is not. Okay. Keep messing with it, I'll mess it up. I think actually sandpaper will take care of that last little bit. This probably could have been thinner, but it's too late for that because I can't. It would now flex. Like I say, I don't do enough of these. I should do more of them. But it is what it is. So we're going to get fresh sandpaper all the way around. So we're going to start with 220 down there. For sure. Now we'll bring our speed down. We shouldn't need the dust collector for this little bit. Can't even put much pressure on that to even to sand. It's actually sort of starting to whine a little bit there. Could probably even go back. Don't really like to go too far back as far as sandpaper on this, but it's another one of them situations that you do what you need to do to make it work. In my case, we're doing a little bit of sort of a little refining of the shape. Make it a nice flowing curve. So if I have to do it with the sandpaper, then I have to, but as you see, I'm primarily doing a lot more bowls and things of that nature where I don't do so much of the fine, intricate type work. Let's see if we got rid of all of our, oh, we got the important part taken care of. We got the little lumps and bumps out of there. So if we use our cut edge of the sandpaper down in there, I mean it's folded over, but I'm using the edge that's cut down in there. Here's where I can see if I can get my fingers smacked by the chuck as well. Like I say, trying to do little itty bitty beads in there is very challenging. But as you can see, sandpaper will take the top off of that bead. That's why the very top wasn't very overly round. And I'm not going to touch that in there. Be nice to start at a higher grit than 220, that's for sure. But that's what we started with, so now we just go through the rest of them. The rest of them should be a little bit quicker. I won't touch that point in there until I get to 400. Maybe not even there. It's the kind of the interesting part. If you get a nice a nice clean cut on this kind of materials like this. Some of these hard exotics like this, why you don't, sanding is very minimal because they generally cut very, very cleanly. And now we're at 400. We can touch that a little bit. Those sides. This is, to me, this is kind of the worst part about making some of this really little stuff, is actually to be able to get to sand it clean, sand it without destroying what fine details you had. On to 600. At this point, then I'm going to take that 600, I'm going to touch the top edge of that disc, because as it stands now it probably would cut you. We don't want it to have to do that. Piece needs to be user friendly as well. As you can see, when you wipe off the dust, it's almost like a polished kind of a surface already. Get it clean so we can finish it. I think that'll work. I think lastly, I think I'm just going to go with the grain up here. Up here is where it's going to show if there's any of the radial scratches left. So we'll just use the same 800. We'll go with the grain where I can a little bit. I think that'll be just fine. I think that'll work. I guess if all else fails, take it off. Did leave tiny little marks up in there, but where did we put it? It's still sitting on the end of the lathe. Good place not for it to be sitting. So zoom out so we can see the whole thing. I don't know, it probably doesn't need to be that tall. But it is what it is. It is loose. Like I said, we have to have, it has to be relatively loose, because I know this thing was not dry. So when it moves more than what it already has, then I think that'll be just fine. So the question is, can we get them back in the same little, should be able to get it back in the same tiny little indentations. And we'll put a little finish on it. And I gotta go get a glove. And after that, I think we're going to do a little bit, we're going to buff the other, or the hollow form itself. Like I say, I want this to be ready to go for Tuesday. And I'm really not allowed to come down here and work at night, although I could come down and buff something, so that wouldn't be too big of a deal. Using the 3408 as I normally would. Nice liberal coat. We're going to let it set up just a little bit, and then we're going to wipe off the excess, and we're going to drop a drop in those. This is the wonders of using this kind of stuff for finishing small details like that, because I can put a little drop that goes down in there. So that's our saturation coat. Not going to be in a giant size hurry. We got 40 seconds for this before it starts to set up. And then we'll wipe off the excess, because there's a lot of excess on that surface right now. So do it with it spinning first, and then that'll get the majority of it off. You can see what it pulled back off. Make more sense probably if it was in a little closer. Then we're going to use the dry part of the paper towel, and we're going to make this basically dry on the surface. I'm going to wipe off all the excess. Dry parts of the paper towel. And that's it. As I spin it around, what I'm really looking for is anything that would be extra shiny. It's usually a place that's a little wet. But really all I want is what's soaked into the wood. And we are going to activate it just so that we can keep on moving. One swipe across, about 18 inches away. I did 2 swipes. Cheated. That can's about empty. I'll leave it alone for a while. I'll come back later and do the very bottom and this upper rim. There's a bunch of dust laying in there right off the bat. But for right now, it's pretty much done. So I'm really curious as to what the base part of this is going to look like when I buff it. So once I get this stinking glove off my hand, we're going to put the buffing wheels on and we're going to buff that. I actually have quite a number of things to buff. I'm kind of behind on that situation. Yeah, because now I seriously messed up with that. Because I might still actually be able to do that. I don't know if these will go wide enough to grab a hold of this thing. Yes. Probably is not going to be anyways close to being true. So I wanted to finish sanding the little guy. It had a crack in the bottom too that I did not you didn't see until you cut some of this off of the bottom, so I had to fill a little crack down there, so that's going to be a little extra sanding. I also cut a little bit of a Morris taper on the bottom end of this so that it fits into the cone, the inside of that cone, because that's a Morris taper as well. Although the unusual one for me is I actually got it sort of a little bit small. So it wasn't quite the fit that I wanted, but it holds it. That's really all it has to do. Because all I want to be able to do to it now is actually sand this last little bit down here. Doesn't spin very true. But it should actually be true enough. I'm going to sand it by hand anyhow. Not quite enough. Getting enough pressure. Probably would have been better off if I would cut that square off of that. Because your fingers will bounce with it. Oh, I still have a line in there. And let's go to plan B. I gotta cut that. Because it's just not going to ever be even remotely round there. So if I use if I use a sled on my, I'm going to cut it off on the bandsaw. Cutting things off on the bandsaw that are round is not the world's greatest, but I have a sled that I made. It's just a simple cutoff sled. It'll go on my bandsaw. It's going to allow me to hold this brown part firmly so that the bandsaw cannot grab a hold of the round and take it out of my fingers. Now, since this is round, it should grab that. Keyword is should. I just knocked down the flashlight. Keyword should. I mean, this thing is never going to spin true. It spins truer than what it was. See if we can make this line disappear a little quicker. Or I might have to go just a shade bit coarser on the sandpaper. And as you can see, I can't put much pressure on it because there's not a whole lot of drive to it. This is also how I cut the bottom off of it too. Tiny bit of that line left, but I think as we go through that'll go away. Guess this could be. My thought is on something like this. This would be like a keepsake urn, I guess you would say. It's probably not big enough. I don't know how many ashes you actually get when you do a pet. I wouldn't think this is quite big enough for that, but people seem to like the little keepsake urn. There's a lady that comes to one of the craft shows that we do. She works for one of the funeral homes here in town, and she keeps saying about that she's going to have them contact me on making some of these little things, but it's been like 2 years now. But I figure maybe if I made a couple and would have them along, why, maybe she'd just get her pocketbook out and buy 1 or 2 of them, take them, and then again, I don't necessarily want to get into the making umpteen little hollow forms either. Well, this actually was kind of fun. I did this one yesterday. It really doesn't take that overly long to make them. And this was all done with handheld hollowing tools rather than the captured system with the laser on it. So that definitely makes it more different. So let's sand it back through 800. Once again, we can do a little random orbit with our 800. Especially up in that area where I probably went up over the top a little bit. Also a place there is a white spot. I don't. So I sanded some of these little cracks here. I filled them with super glue. But usually when I do that, I sand that off with some fairly coarse sandpaper. But I think them white streaks are from something else. Doesn't seem to want to show up. Now I have some super glue on the bottom. That's going to be our next challenge. Of course, the other challenge is to get the tool rest where you want it. Close enough. Because this is sort of a glob of super glue down there. I should be able to take my spindle gouge on its side and use it as sort of a scraper. Also means we're going to have to bring the speed up a little bit. All I want to do is get the big clump of super glue away. And that seemed to actually work the way I thought it should. Of course, that still leaves me a little nub in the bottom, which is okay. And I'm going to sand a little bit out here on this outside edge as best as I can. Just because that's where it's going to sit at eventually. Just round that corner just a little bit. And that's that. So, while I'm at it, I guess, put the glove back on. This one, the other one I used, like I said, I used the 3460, which is the next level up in thickness. Because This stuff, I started out with some 3408 on the very bottom of that other piece, and it just flat out disappears. So it's soaking in too far. I'm going to spin it as slow as I can. Like I say, this is a 3460. Same principles. No odor, no smoking paper towels. Just slow setting. This time I can cheat or make it easier and just dribble some right on the top. As you can see, I'm going at a very, very slow speed. As slow as what the lathe will go on this particular pulley, which is like 140 RPMs, 150 RPMs. Not worried if I get a little bit on that waste piece down there, just as long as I don't get it down over the edge into the hole. It is still super glue, it will still stick to your fingers. But I want a nice solid coat on. We're going to do the same thing we did with the finial. I'm going to put a nice heavy coat on, and we're going to wipe off the excess. So you can see it's really shiny and wet, so that means it's no longer absorbing it in. And be a little quicker. I'm not going to mess around too much because this stuff should have had enough moisture in it to make this set up quicker. It didn't seem to for some ungodly reason. This one hasn't sat for a week though. Yeah, it's starting to set up. It's going to set up on me quickly. When it's pulling the moisture out of the wood, which is what makes super glue activate. So it's becoming more difficult to wipe off. And I'm going to get as much of it as I can without making a total mess. And then I'll just leave it alone. Let it set up on its own. A little bit of 600 or 800 grit sandpaper will take care of any of the little bumps and stuff like that's going to probably be there. Although it seems like I'm getting most of it off. So that's a little miniature hollow form. Like I say, they were kind of fun. I might have to dig out some other material to make some more of them. It's kind of a challenge. Like I say, it's not in a captured system. It's all hand hollowed. Of course, to me, the real thing there is how thin is it? And that's the other problem with doing little things like that. I don't have any kind of calipers to actually reach down inside of something like that. It's just, other than my finger. The hole actually is, I think, was actually big enough that I could have used the same hollowing system that I did last week. So once again, it's got some nice color to it. It's very little, dimension wise, because that's the question I usually get on something like that. It's about 3 inches tall. Yeah, it's about 3 inches tall, maybe 3 or just over 3 at this widest point up here. So I mean, it certainly doesn't take a very big block of wood to make something like that, which is kind of the nice part about it in a way. So now we can go back to the original one, and we'll give it a little bufferoonie, and we're probably going to call it a day. And we'll keep that because we'll need that for the other one. Another one. So buffing wheels, get a tool rest. Just waxed that last week. It should slide better than that. But some of this, there again, we had some of that stuff was sort of wet, so I should have probably re-waxed it. But we didn't. So we use some Vonex and Carnauba wax. Put our drawbar in. Take my word for it, don't do it without the drawbar. If you do, bring up the tailstock or something to keep it supported, because it will walk right off of there. And that's another one of them scenarios of don't ask me how I know that, because it's not fun when this comes walking off the end and flops around and all that good stuff. Bring our speed up around 1700 RPM. Charge the wheel. This piece here has sat for 24 hours. I don't normally buff anything. Don't want to buff it right away, because the amount of super glue that I put on there and soaked in, if I buff it too quickly and it hasn't had a chance to cure, it just sucks it right back to the surface, and then it cures instantly. So you have this nice little texture that you don't want. See if you don't have quite enough walnuts on there. Definitely some wood's polished better than others. You can see this one. Our fingers is going to be the biggest telltale. I'm going to buff all the way around, but there's places right there I can see and feel that there's some little places that there's missed some of the excess glue that I didn't get off of this quick enough. By virtue of how I was doing it, for one. Something like this, if you wanted the super high gloss shine, nothing says that you can't put multiple coats of you'd want to use a 3460. I have done so already in the past with certain things, but it is a lot more work, because you're going to put multiple coats on, and if you've ever done a pen, you'll know that multiple coats of super glue do not lay down flat. So you put lots of coats on, 4, 5, 6 coats on, and then you start the sanding process almost completely over again to get all the lumps and bumps and all that crap off of it. Then you would have a super high gloss, like some people like the super high gloss lacquers and stuff like that. So it can be done. Just a little bit more work. Like I said, I go back here after either 600 or 800. Because there's some places you can't always, the ironic part is a lot of times you can't see them, but you can feel them. And when you sand over it a little bit, you'll see them disappear. It doesn't take much, but it will clog up sandpaper because it is plastic. Super glue is nothing more than liquid plastic. So it's a little unfriendly to sandpaper. At least this particular sandpaper anyhow. Because what we're really buffing is the part that's get down in the surface, in the wood fibers themselves. There's a lot more bumps and lumps on there than what it appeared to be, because it totally clogged up that side of the sandpaper quickly. And I should have known that, because there's a transition. Because holding it by my finger, I was able to come up to right here to sort of apex. But I should have taken the time to make that dowel to go down inside the piece, so I could actually have spun it, or at least have total access to it. I wouldn't necessarily need to spin it like I did the little guy, but total access to the piece is where it's the biggest part of it. Like I say, your fingers will tell you more than what your eyes will on almost everything in wood turning. Your fingers are much more sensitive to different little bumps and lumps and any of that good stuff. Looks like I should actually clean that wheel a little bit. Get rid of some of the hard bits on there. Pulls them right off. Let me start out with fresh. Then we'll go back to the same area we just did. And it'll come up to a nice high satin shine. Be careful around the hole. It wants to grab a hold of it. And it certainly wouldn't be the first piece that I sent flying against a wall. I have a tendency to get a little rambunctious or a little lazy on certain places. My finger's in the hole, so I don't need to worry about catching the top hole, but this would definitely be the boring part of the job. Also, it can be the most satisfying to bring a piece totally to life, I think. And I think we're still missing some spots. I'll find a place of sandpaper that's not. This is actually a wet dry sandpaper. Had some pieces that I sort of really have messed up with the super glue part of it. And I've actually sanded them wet. Use water, sanded them wet.
Fake beauty?
Yeah. Are you going to get it?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll go in multiple directions. This piece is light as a feather though. Partially because of the kind of wood it is, but pretty thin. It's only about 1/8 of an inch probably up here at the top, but everywhere else I think I measured it down to about 1/4 or less. I think that's got the Vonnex. It's got a little white spot right there. Thinking the white spot is actually something in the wood right there though. Don't think it's super glue. I'm going to sand it just a little bit and see. No, there's something in the wood. So that's the hard part done. Or the most time consuming part, I should say. Now I'll put some carnauba on it. So the speed down, this is the really soft wheel. This is part of the wheel system. The first wheel would be the one that would be white, the white used for white diamond. I don't ever go back to the red. The red is just, to me, the red is just too coarse. What I've been taught with that, the red is really kind of too abrasive, and the wheel is actually a much harder composite. So you can put some pretty big scratches in pieces. The other thing this wheel's doing for you is getting rid of any of the leftover Vonnex that's still probably laying on that surface. Plus puts down a nice layer of carnauba wax or two. Hi, buddies. Huh? Yeah, I'll explain. Nope. And that's pretty much it. You could put multiple coats of carnauba wax if you wanted to. Put that on as many times as you want. The more layers you build up, the more shine it becomes. We could take a chance on the finial. So that was really hard wood, so go back to the Vonnex, back up to speed. I just slow it down just a little bit. I'll run about 1600 RPMs on that. The thing with buffing finials is you got to be extremely careful. Really light touch, because it can get a hold. These buffing wheels can get a hold of one of these in a very quick hurry. This probably really should be waiting till tomorrow night. I just won't put the carnauba on just yet. Also can get up underneath a little bit. Still could use a little bit more, but that gives you an idea of what the shine is going to be on that. Get rid of the buffing wheels and I'll show you, and we're going to be done because my daughter just went to get us something for supper. And there's going to be our finished piece. Can't let go of the finial, but we got everything in the picture. So that's it. The finished product, I guess you'd say. Anybody have any questions, comments? Otherwise, we are going to call it a day. And we should be back. Oh yeah, we'll be back next weekend. Be the following weekend. I won't be here. Until then, y'all have a good week. And we'll try and do something a little bit more exciting next weekend. But till then, have a good week.